Hello, my name's Fiona Clancy. I am the Digitisation Workflow Manager at the British Library, and thanks for listening to my presentation today about how we do digitisation at the British Library. The library's been making copies of our collection items for many years, beginning with microfilm and microfiche, and now creating digital images. And in fact, we've been doing that for more than 15 years. We've used several techniques and processes over this period and have had the opportunity to learn from the many projects that we've undertaken, and to understand how we can improve. Historically, we've approached digitisation on a project-by-project basis. 18 months ago, however, we set up a portfolio called Heritage Made Digital, within which there's a project specifically looking at how to streamline and make improvements to our digitisation activities. Today I'm going to talk specifically about how we do things, but also more generally about the process, the tools and the skills involved in digitisation. When we participate in digitisation activities, our primary aims are to improve access to our collections, to preserve not only the physical items, but also the digital objects that we've created, because physical items deteriorate. And to do this to the best of our ability, creating the best quality digital objects that we can, and in the most complete way. Our collections vary greatly. Unsurprisingly, the majority of our holdings are bound volumes, archival files and papers, but we also hold maps, stamps, scrolls, photographs, glass negatives, wax seals, globes, such an unusual variety of objects that we can't mention everything here. But I'm mainly going to focus on standard volume archival file capture today. So when we think about scoping or planning a digitisation project, the first and most important activity is having the correct data. When planning to digitise part of our collection, we need to understand what the items that we're digitising are. During the scoping phase, we gather information on the number of items, the predicted number of images that we'll create, the format and fragility of the items that we'll be handling. We consider what we're hoping to achieve. Is it long-term preservation, immediate use of the images, or ease of access to the content? When we've defined our goals, we can plan how to achieve them. How much money do we have to spend, and how much time do we have to do these things? And the answer to these questions informs the type and quality of the images that we plan to create. Our next questions are around staff, space and equipment. And we gather data about these things as well. How many images can one device capture in a day? What's the difference between capturing large format maps and modern printed books? The hints, modern printed books are a lot faster. How long does it take to run checksums on the image files produced? How long does it take to move files across the network? If conservation activity is necessary, how many hours will it take to treat or assess those collection items? This data allows us to plan our projects. We set milestones, we measure ourselves against them, and we move effort around if necessary. All of this data helps workflow management and scheduling, deciding how many things we have to do, how many people we need to do it, and how much time we need to do them, and in what order. So this is a kind of representation of an ideal workflow. So first, conservation. Can the material be safely handled by the imaging team or any of the other teams that are using the collection item during the life cycle of digitisation? How how do we get the items to the imaging studio? How long will all of this take? We also consider the copyright status of all of the items. Do we have the rights to this material? Have we documented the right status? If the copyright's owned by someone else, have we sought their permission to copy and make the images available? And then the actual digital capture. Everyone thinks this is the most important part of the process, but honestly, in our experience, it's just one component. Nevertheless, you do need to create the image files to the correct specification, ensuring your color management is correct, that you save the images store the images safely, and have accurate file naming. And we also consider cataloguing to aid discovery. So many of our collection items aren't catalogued at the point that we begin a digitisation project. We have two models of describing the digital objects that we create. This is based historically on the library's cataloguing system that the physical item was added to. It's roughly divided into two groups, printed material and manuscript material. For printed material, we create a separate holding record that describes the digital object created. And for manuscript material, we use the physical object description. By this I mean that the catalogue record for the physical item also describes the digital object. Cataloguing is shown on this slide as happening as part of the first step, but in reality, it often happens throughout the project, and often from the digital image rather than the physical object. After you've created your digital object, you should perform image quality assurance. The elements of this can be automated, so we use a variety of tools. Jove, for instance, provides digital object verification, so making sure that your image file is what you want it to be and it's correct and well formed. We create checksums and we perform visual checks to ensure that the image is in focus, doesn't contain foreign objects like hands, that there aren't missing or duplicate image files. Where appropriate, we perform optical character recognition on the image files. Sometimes we stitch large image files together. We also create structural metadata. At a minimum, this is recording the browsing direction of the file set. So, do you read the item right to left or left to right? But also identifying if there are multiple texts bound into a single volume. So we might identify that text 1 starts at image 1 and finishes at image 100, and text 2 starts at image 101. And we assign archival resource keys, or ARKs, as persistent identifiers, and we use the data structure METs to tie everything together. We store our objects in a preservation system which is replicated across 4 nodes, so we literally keep 4 copies of everything. And the metadata is held separately and linked using ARKs. So our image file format specifications are based on our aims to facilitate access for users, but also to ensure long-term secure preservation storage. So TIFF and JP2s are the only 2 file formats that we digitally preserve. TIFF is a format most people are familiar with, and here we have our TIFF specification. It's an uncompressed version 6, the colour space is Adobe RGB 1998, and we capture between 3 and 400 ppi. So that's TIFF is only for preservation. We use JPEG 2000 for access and preservation. And this slide shows the lossless JP2 profile that we use. It's obviously a lot more complicated than the TIFF specification. We have 2 JP2 profiles, a lossy and a lossless profile. The lossy profile is used for newspaper content most frequently, as that's often captured in grayscale rather than colour. And we consider the loss in this compression to be noise rather than significant data loss. We use JP2 predominantly because of its ability as a format to compress without loss of data and to open and render to the users quickly. During ingest, we perform a round-trip conversion, by which I mean we will take a TIFF, convert it to JP2, and then using that JP2 convert back to TIFF. We'll compare the two TIFFs, and if they are the same, we'll discard them and save only the JP2, and then that JP2 then becomes our preservation and our access file format. In the lossy profile, we see an average of a 73% reduction in the size of file compared to the uncompressed TIFF. And when you're creating as many files as we do, that's really a significant saving in storage costs. To do the JP2 conversion, we use a software called Kakadu to code and decode our JP2s. So to talk a little bit about our capture devices. So the library currently has 4 permanent imaging studios using a mixture of equipment, capture equipment. Our most versatile capture equipment is the medium format digital camera, which produces the highest quality digital images. The setup you can see here on this slide is used for very large format material. 3D objects like statues and volumes with restricted opening angles, or just any collection item that we choose or desire to produce the very best quality of reproduction. The medium format cameras that we use are Phase 1 or Mamiya, and these output RAW files. We convert these RAW files into TIFFs for use in the workflow. And after the images have passed quality assurance checks, then we'll discard the RAW files. And our other main piece of reproduction equipment is a flatbed scanner. These are suitable for modern books, unbound archival material, or anything that can be opened to 180 degrees, so flat. Although the quality of the output isn't as good as the medium format cameras, these do contain 50 megapixel sensors, so really the output, the quality of the image files produced from these devices is very high. The price of these devices varies significantly, and the skill of the operator, the required skill of the operator varies significantly. So we make these choices as we consider what we want to do as part of our project. Other equipment that's used by us to run the workstations, so both workstations that you just saw, we use high specification PCs or Macs, color calibrated monitors. The lighting setups you saw there had soft boxes. We use light meters, daylight lamps. We also use a variety of scanners, slide scanners, microfilm scanners, large format scanners. This all just depends on the format of the collection item that we're capturing. And then just as part of our standard studio kits, we have alternative lenses and spare sensors, camera backs and camera bodies, because these parts do break and they can take weeks to be fixed. So rather than have downtime in any of our operating areas, we have spares so that we can make sure that we're constantly making use of our team and our equipment. A few years ago, we began using USB 3 cables rather than FireWire cables. But if you have any specific questions about the setup, the equipment we're using in that area, I will be around for a Q&A session later. So talking a little bit about the software that we use the inbuilt software for the scanners. All of our medium format cameras use a software called Capture One. Photoshop is used for image viewing, color checking occasionally, image editing. We use Jove for format checking. We're currently experimenting with several tools for checksum creation, and the checksums that we produce are SHA-256. So at the end of the image capture process, when we're assured that the image files are correct and a catalogue record has been created, we've created the structural metadata that we need, we'll create a submission information package, or SIP, and this is what we deliver for publication. So this is what we call a SIP, is what we call the collection of products that have been created as part of the workflow, so the descriptive metadata, and we link them all together using METS. METS is a schema standard for encoding descriptive, administrative, and structural metadata regarding objects within a digital library. The METS schema is agnostic concerning the descriptive or administrative metadata schemas that its implementers choose to use. So whatever cataloging standard you use, you can use METS to wrap all of these things. So when we've created our submission information package and provided it to our publication platform, that's how we make images available. So here we can see that we use a publication platform called the Universal Viewer. This is an image interoperability framework, or IIIF compliant viewer. This means IIIF means that the British Library hosts our images on our own servers, but that we can share with other users of the framework our content without them having to give a copy of the actual image. And so they don't need to store the image. They can just, using the framework, access an image manifest and see the content that we have. And so here's a copy of the Canterbury Tales, and on the left of the screen you can see our catalogue record, and the right of the screen is what that digitised volume looks like in our viewer. Here is another IIIF viewer called Mirador. What you can see here is 3 objects stored in different institutions, and they're all displaying side by side in this IIIF compliant viewer. So that's a kind of an overview of how we do things, and I've included here some links that I think will be useful. I will be available, I think, later to answer any questions that you have, and thank you very much for your time.